I'm here at the Energy Solutions, the program administrator for Illinois Shines, to talk about REC contracting and rebatching. RECs are renewable energy credits, which are transferred to a contracting utility in exchange for financial incentives. There are two contracts for a project: the contract between the customer and the approved vendor, and the REC contract, which is the agreement between the approved vendor, or the seller, and the contracting utility, or the buyer. There are three possible contracting utilities for the Illinois Shines program: Ameren, ComEd, or Mid-American. Note that the contracting utility may or may not be the same as the interconnecting utility. For example, a project in Ameren territory could end up in a contract with ComEd. REC contracting comes into play after a project is Part 1 verified. There are both 15 and 20-year REC contract types. Both have different versions that have been modified and updated at different times during the lifetime of the program. It's important to read and understand the specific version of the REC contract that has been prepared for your projects before you sign. Only approved vendors can serve as the contractual party to REC contracts. Designees cannot sign a REC contract. After Part 1 verification, the program administrator generates the contract documents and submits the corresponding batches to the Illinois Commerce Commission, or ICC, for approval. The date of ICC approval is known as the trade date. Once the ICC approves, the contracting utility will send the contract to the approved vendor to execute, which the AV has 7 business days to do. Collateral is due 30 business days from the trade date, or the ICC approval date. Generally, edits to the contract cannot be made after the ICC has approved, so it is important for approved vendors to review project details carefully during the rebatching period, but more on that later. A batch is a group of applications submitted to the program that move through the application process together and are contracted together as a single product order. A batch may include a combination of project types and locations, as long as the group of projects fall under the same REC contract type. Once projects are Part 1 verified, they must go through rebatching, which is part of the preparation to submit projects to the ICC for approval. Approved vendor rebatching opens 12 business days in advance of the ICC meeting date, which is also known as the trade date, on the eligibility deadline. Approved vendors will receive email communications about rebatching to their chosen primary and rebatching notification email addresses. It is critical to respond to rebatching requests in a timely manner, since the rebatching period only lasts 2 business days. Approved vendors should also mark these rebatching windows on their calendar to ensure that notifications are not missed. Rebatching is completed using an Excel template available on SharePoint. Rebatching is the approved vendor's opportunity to withhold a project from being submitted to the ICC or rebatch projects into a custom batch. Withholding a project keeps it in verified status, but it skips getting submitted to the ICC for 1 cycle. Approved vendors can also elect to permanently withdraw an application during the rebatching period. During rebatching, approved vendors can also specify any custom batch groupings they may have for their projects. Approved vendors have approximately 2.5 days to complete rebatching, which ends at the election deadline. Next is program administrator rebatching. If the approved vendor does not perform rebatching, the program administrator will default to submitting all projects to the next memo and may reorganize projects into different batches at our discretion. As a best practice, approved vendors should not submit projects to the program if they aren't ready to receive a REC contract. It is very important that approved vendors review these rebatching files to ensure no projects end up approved for a contract they do not intend to. Approved vendors should also review the capacity factors, size, and RECs of their projects to ensure ICC approval of accurate incentive levels. Once projects are submitted to the ICC for approval, changes to the included contract details cannot be changed and projects cannot be removed. Disciplinary action may result from refusal to sign REC contracts. The master rec contract details the terms of the agreement with the contracting utility. Over time, an approved vendor may accumulate several different master rec contracts for different versions of the contract and different contracting utilities. Each master rec contract has a unique ID number. Underneath the master rec contract is an Exhibit A, which corresponds to a batch ID. A master rec contract may include one or many batches, and the batch can include one or many projects, up to a total of 5,000 kW. For each project within a batch, there is a Schedule A. The Schedule A details the expected price, recs, and size of each project. After the first product order is executed under the master rec contract, subsequent batches will only be issued an Exhibit A and Schedule As. Once the project is built and ICC approved, the approved vendor can submit the Part 2 application. Upon Part 2 verification, which is also known as capital E energization, the program administrator will distribute a Schedule B to the approved vendor and utility. The Schedule B contains the final pricing, rec delivery obligation, and sizing information, which will be reflected in invoicing. The Schedule B must be issued before a project can be invoiced. Projects may invoice for payment after energization when a project is Part 2 verified and a Schedule B is issued. The deadline for project energization is 18 months from the trade date for distributed generation or 24 months from the trade date for community solar. Extensions may be requested prior to the energization deadline. Note that if a project misses the energization deadline without receiving an extension, it can be removed from the contract by the contracting utility. The payment structure varies based on project type and contract type. For example, under the 2024 15-year rec delivery contract, projects will invoice for the first time in the month following energization. Small DG projects are invoiced 100% upfront the month after energization. Other project types are paid over a longer time frame. The payment structure is fundamentally different between the 15 and 20-year contracts. The 15-year contracts are paid upfront, meaning 100% of the rec incentives will be paid out before the end of the 15-year delivery term. 20-year contracts are pay as deliver, meaning payment will be issued per rec over the full 20-year delivery term as recs are delivered to the contracting utility. Invoices for payment may be submitted to the utility on at least a quarterly basis. The 2021, 2022, and 2024 15-year rec delivery contracts have 3 quarterly payment cycles. For example, if a large DG project is Part 2 verified or energized in December, it would fall on payment cycle A and invoice in January, April, July, and October, and so on. If it is a small DG project, it would just invoice one time in January. The program administrator will provide quarterly netting statements to the utilities and invoices to the approved vendors. Although the payment cycles are quarterly, you can see in the table that each month of the year is covered by a payment cycle. So an approved vendor can have different projects invoicing on each of the different payment cycles, depending on when projects energize. The program administrator will make an invoice available to each approved vendor that has had projects Part 2 verified during the prior quarter. Previously energized projects with outstanding or missed payments will also have their payment due included on the invoice. For 20-year contracts, there is only one payment cycle. Projects must be energized by the energization deadline, which is the end of the quarterly period, in order to be included for the next quarterly invoice. As a reminder, energization is Part 2 verification and issuance of a Schedule B. So as an example, a project would need to become energized by November 30th to meet the January invoice. If the November invoice deadline is missed, the project would invoice during the next quarter in April. The rest of the process, including invoice due dates, remains the same. The program administrator provides invoices and quarterly netting statements to approved vendors as a courtesy. The invoices are placed in the approved vendor folders on SharePoint. Approved vendors can use the invoices provided to submit to the utility for payment. It is important that approved vendors submit their invoice to the contracting utility during the invoice period, which is the 1st through the 10th of the month, to receive payment on time. Any invoices not received during this period will be tracked and included on the next quarter's invoice. The program administrator will not send invoices to utilities on the approved vendor's behalf. Additionally, approved vendors are responsible for reviewing the accuracy of invoices before submitting them to the utilities. Systems must deliver at least one rec from the system to the buyer's tracking registry account in GATS or MRETs within 90 days of energization for systems with an actual nameplate capacity greater than 5 kW, or 100 days of energization for systems with an actual nameplate capacity equal to or less than 5 kW. Failure to deliver a first rec on time may result in removal and forfeiture of collateral. It is important for approved vendors to update rec delivery information in the tracking registry at least annually to meet ongoing rec delivery obligations. The Schedule B outlines these obligations by delivery year. When the last system within a batch reaches the end of its delivery term, an approved vendor may request a refund of the collateral associated with that batch. Note that the program recognizes rec deliveries based on transfer date and not when the rec was generated, or sometimes called the vintage. So, for example, if a rec was generated in May 2024, which is the 2023 to 2024 delivery year, but not transferred to the utility in GATS until June 2024, which is part of the 2024 to 2025 delivery year, it would count for the 2024 to 2025 delivery year. Or in a case where the approved vendor delayed entering the system's generation information into GATS, the transfer date might be many months after the generation date. The generation date is almost never the same month as the transfer date. The delivery year is the same as the program year and runs June through May. REC transfer dates come into play during the annual reporting period and is the basis for which any potential drawdowns for under delivery are determined via the REC performance evaluation. Failure to deliver or transfer RECs may result in removal and forfeiture of collateral. If a system is just delivering fewer RECs than expected over time, the project would likely face a REC shortfall, resulting in potential collateral drawdown. The approved vendor is required to replenish or top up the collateral if a drawdown occurs. Drawdowns start after a project has been energized and it's been 3 full delivery years from the date the delivery term started. The delivery term starts the first day of the month after the date of first REC delivery. For more information about annual reports and drawdowns, please visit the Illinois Shines website and navigate to program help guides. Thank you for watching. For any questions or assistance, please reach out to the program administrator.